$743. That is the number on your screen at 2:17 in the morning. It isn't what you owe, it's what's left after a declined transaction at a gas station sends a notification that wakes you up in the dark. You are 24 years old, carrying $18,400 in student loans and a car with 140,000 miles that needs a timing belt you've been ignoring for 6 weeks because $340 simply doesn't exist in your life right now. You aren't in a crisis, which is what makes this kind of broke so difficult to explain. You are just permanently, quietly running on a number that cannot absorb a single unexpected event. This is where the two paths of your life begin. Path A is the 9 to 5, the standard script. Path B is the empire, the alternative script. Both start with the same math, but they end in different countries. Level 1, the math of the atmosphere, the first $10,000. In Path A, you are a builder in the traditional sense. You land an entry-level job in regional logistics. The office smells like old coffee and printer toner. Your manager, Ellis, explains the software once while you take notes. Your first paycheck is $1,847 after taxes. You open a Roth IRA on a Sunday night and fund it with $200. It feels like a drop of water in an ocean, an amount that couldn't possibly matter, but you automate it so you never have to see it leave. You eat at home 6 nights a week because the arithmetic of your $740 a month shared apartment demands it. At this level, money is not a resource, it is the atmosphere. You cannot think clearly about it because you are inside it. Every coffee, every dinner invitation, every suggestion to split an Uber is a calculation you perform before you answer. Scarcity warps your judgment the way heat warps glass, gradually and invisibly, until nothing sits flat anymore. In Path B, you are also 24, but you have an idea you can't stop thinking about. It's 2:04 a.m. on a Tuesday, and you open your Notes app. The idea isn't complicated, it's just obvious, which you'll later learn is rarer than complicated. You type 11 lines, then 22. You aren't a founder yet, you're just a person who hasn't gone back to sleep. The next morning, you sit in a stand-up meeting and nod at the right times, but the note is open under the table. Everything is already different, even if nobody knows it yet. By the time you hit $10,000, the psychological weight is disproportionate. For Path A, it's the first time you've ever had 5 figures. You check the balance 3 times a day, not because you distrust the bank, but because you don't trust yourself. You feel like a different category of person. You stop thinking about money as safety and start thinking of it as information. Level 2, the stability trap versus. The first lie, $10,000 to $100,000. The gap between $0 and $10,000 was psychological, but the gap between $10,000 and $100,000 is behavioral. One is a feeling you survive, the other is a system you build. In Path A, you are now 26. Your income is $74,000. You have $52,000 spread across a brokerage account, a Roth IRA, and an emergency fund. You are maxing your 401k. You feel responsible and correct. Then, one evening at 11:30, you sit down to model out the next 40 years. You use conservative assumptions, 7% returns, and the number at the end of the spreadsheet is fine. It describes a careful, stable, modest exit at age 67. This is the stability trap. You have followed every instruction, and the reward is a ceiling you can now see from here. You realize a salary is a ceiling designed to look like a floor. You are excellent at not losing, but you aren't yet building anything. To break it, you start a side project, a Saturday morning thing that makes $500 a month, then $1,100, then $2,300. You don't upgrade your life, you take every dollar and put it back into the mechanism. In Path B, you are 25 and you've just handed in your resignation. You have $9,000 saved and a co-founder named RAJ who is a better engineer than you'll ever be. Freedom tastes exactly like you thought it would for 4 days. On day 5, the silence becomes loud. There is no one to tell you if you're going in the right direction. You tell your parents it's going really well. That's the first lie. You have 6 weeks of runway if you eat carefully and don't get sick. You raise a $480,000 pre-seed round on a pitch deck that is 40% vision and 60% typography choices. The raise doesn't feel like winning, it feels like relief because you bought more time. You hire your first employee, Priya, and suddenly the fact that she bet her actual rent on you lives in your chest and never leaves. The product breaks on her first day. You and RAJ stay up until 4 a.m. fixing it while eating cereal from the box. This is the job now, not the pitch, but the cereal at 4 a.m. Level 3, the asset shift versus. The Series A machine, $100,000 to $500,000. At this stage, the paths diverge into different psychological states. In Path A, you are 34 and you buy a duplex. You put $58,000 down and net $720 a month after the mortgage, taxes, and insurance. It isn't dynasty money, but it is proof of concept. Something you own is generating income while you think about something else. This restructures your identity more than any promotion ever did. You now understand leverage as a force you are operating, not just a word in a book. You stop asking how much you can earn and start asking how many things can earn on your behalf. In Path B, you are 29 and you just signed a Series A term sheet for $14 million. This is the moment the company stops being fully yours. You now have a board of directors. You hire 20 people in 6 months. Your co-founder, RAJ, is restructured into a chief architect role because the board thinks the company needs different skills at scale. You have lunch sometimes, and it looks fine from the outside, but the thing you built together at a kitchen table belongs to a different version of you both. In real life, the door doesn't slam, it just slowly stops opening as wide. You are now a dealer of capital. You stop counting your own hours and start thinking in deal flow. You are managing people's output and their errors. You start to see the ethical architecture of high finance, restructuring pension obligations to meet a 22% IRR for the fund. You know what it means for the retirees, but nobody says it in the meeting. Your year-end cut is $480,000, and you wire $40,000 to your parents. You tell yourself the situation was already insolvent. Level 4, the millionaire identity crisis, $1 million to $5 million. Both paths eventually hit the $1 million mark, but the texture is different. In Path A, it happens on a Tuesday. Your brokerage app refreshes while you're in a meeting about something that stopped mattering 6 months ago, and the number is 7 figures. You wait for the feeling everyone implied would arrive, but instead, you get a cold, practical realization: $1 million at a 4% withdrawal rate is only $40,000 a year. That isn't freedom, it's a starting point. You realize you weren't chasing a number, you were chasing the thing the number was supposed to confirm about you. In Path B, you are 35 and you're going through an IPO. The bankers use the word story as a unit of financial measurement. Your net worth has swung from $0 to $340 million and back to $190 million on paper in a single decade. On IPO day, you are on the balcony of the NYSE. Everyone is wearing the expression of people who understand they are in a photograph. You ring the bell, the floor erupts, and your company is valued at $2.3 billion. RAJ is not there. Priya sends a one-word text, "Congratulations," followed by a period. You stare at the period longer than the word. Your father is wearing the jacket he bought for your graduation, and he asks if $18 a share is good. You say yes, but you mean good enough. You realize the millionaire milestone was just a proof of concept, and the real question begins on the other side. Level 5, the architecture of illusion, $5 million to $50 million. Now you enter the world of structure. At $5 million, the game changes texture. It's no longer about building, it's about positioning. You are moving capital, not working for it. You learn the secret of the wealthy: they never sell. You meet a man like Garrett Whitmore, who represents a family office managing billions. He explains that selling a stock with a 600% gain means paying $80 million in taxes permanently. Instead, they borrow $190 million against the asset at 3.4%. Liquidity is borrowed into existence. The asset continues to compound. Real wealth is built on the refusal to subtract. You start using tools the 99% don't even know exist. Cost segregation. You hire an engineer to itemize every component of your multi-family building: appliances, flooring, fixtures. You reclassify 40% of the building's value as 5-year assets, taking $280,000 in accelerated depreciation in year 1. Your ordinary income disappears on paper. The 1031 exchange: when you sell a property, you roll the gains directly into a larger one. No capital gains event. The asset grows, and you never trigger the liability. The S-Corp election: you turn your LLC into an S-Corp. You pay yourself a reasonable salary of $55,000 and take the remaining $125,000 as a distribution. Distributions carry no self-employment tax. You just saved $17,600 with one document. The Augusta Rule: you rent your own home to your business for 14 days a year. It's a tax-free rental income of $14,000 from your own pocket. At this level, your reputation becomes a financial instrument. It earns returns independent of your direct decisions. You choose the rooms you walk into with increasing precision. You understand common ownership, how firms like BlackRock and Vanguard are the top shareholders in both Coca-Cola and Pepsi, effectively eliminating competition while you fund the mechanism. Level 6, the architect of the system, $50 million to $100 million plus. At $55 million, you stop thinking in fiscal years and start thinking in cycles: demographic cycles, credit cycles, infrastructure cycles. You position ahead of them like a navigator reading weather 3 days out. You realize the global financial system is governed by 3 invisible mechanisms. 1. The Eurodollar system, the phantom money supply created by offshore banks that the Federal Reserve cannot control. Most US dollars are just digital credits in London or the Cayman Islands. 2. Notional value, the $600 trillion derivatives market is a mathematical hallucination. It's not real debt, but a network of hypothetical triggers that can freeze the real economy in a microscopic margin call. 3. Street name registration, you realize that when people buy stocks on an app, they own nothing. They hold a contractual entitlement, while the broker uses their shares as collateral for their own trading. You are now the architect. You sit on the board of a $90 billion sovereign wealth fund. You don't run trades, you set allocation mandates. You have a direct line to finance ministers and central bank governors as a peer, not a lobbyist. You restructure emerging market debt quietly in coordination with other funds. You haven't used a public ATM in 6 years. You have a security detail. You have a family office of 12 people, tax teams, legal teams, concierge operations. You establish an intentionally defective grantor trust to move $4.2 million outside your taxable estate, while the growth happens permanently outside the government's reach. You set up a dynasty trust in South Dakota because it has no rule against perpetuities and no state income tax. Your great-grandchildren will benefit from decisions you are making today. Level 7, the human residual, the cost of the empire. Building an empire has a price that isn't listed on a balance sheet. It is the specific loneliness of the job. It is the 22 minutes you spend sitting in your car in the driveway because you are too tired to go inside. It is the realization that your grandmother's coffee can above the refrigerator, where she kept cash because she didn't trust herself to spend it, was a version of wisdom you didn't understand until you replaced it with complex legal structures. You go home for the holidays, and the house smells the same, but there is a gap now. Not a gap in love, but a gap in air pressure. You pay for dinner, and there is a micro-silence that lasts just long enough to be uncomfortable. You start losing people who aren't leaving, they just gradually drift away like 2 boats when someone is slowly letting out the rope. You grieve these losses quietly because you can't explain them without sounding arrogant. Success is as isolating as failure because both leave you sitting alone in a room wondering if anyone sees you clearly. You are the first in your family tree that stops bending under a specific kind of pressure. You didn't just break the ceiling, you removed it, and everyone who comes after you will look up and see only open sky. They will never know about the 4 a.m. cereal or the $743 balance. The ending, the machine finds new people. Whether you choose path A or path B, the system remains the same. In a glass tower in Midtown, a 23-year-old analyst walks through the doors for the first time. His badge is freshly printed and still smells like chemicals. He thinks this is about a career. He thinks it's about money. He doesn't know yet that he is entering a system with gravity. And somewhere else, a 24-year-old is standing at a grocery store checkout. She is buying the store brand coffee. She is doing the math she has always done. She thinks if she earns more, something will finally resolve. She doesn't know what the machine will ask of her, not in dollars, but in distance. The machine doesn't negotiate the terms. It opens every morning, and it takes whoever shows up consistently, patiently, and without flinching. The balance is $743. It always starts near there. It always will.